Does anybody want to open us in prayer today? I'll just go ahead and do it. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with these awesome Kidman leaders from around the world. Thank you for the opportunity to just read this book together and discuss just the different thoughts and opinions. Lord, I pray for the different ministries represented here. Lord, as they're preparing for Sunday, give them the wisdom they need, be with their teams in preparation for Sunday. And Lord, just keep Satan at bay as they prepare. Lord, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So this week was chapters 7 and 8, and that little tidbit thing at the end of different scenarios. So what were your thoughts for chapter 7, recipes for disaster, and going over the 6 keys to a great when this, then that solution? Which, total side note, just from a grammatical standpoint, I kept having to reread a lot of sentences just because of the wording. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of I had to go back and reread because of the wording, which is confusing to me. But what are your thoughts on this chapter?
He has a plan, right? It's the whole thing. Like, may have a plan for everything, it seems. Like the whole, yeah. Like when you say it, this, then when that, like it's very mechanical, and so there's like it's not, yeah. There's training involved to get there. That's what I mean. I was actually really surprised at how short this book was. You can read it in like one sitting. It was that short. I was like, oh, it's just it. But yeah, it was like, yeah, it's just basically trying to, y- yeah, think of, I suppose, how you are going to respond in certain scenarios when they come up. And so you kind of try and eliminate like he talks about exceptions being that they don't throw you, that they become part of like, I suppose, a routine of your life, and that you so yeah, I it's it's just a new way of thinking, I think. Not a new way of thinking, it's what am I trying to say? It is partly a new way of thinking, but it's also because I'm like on the fly thinker as well. And so this is a bit different for me to have to sit down and kind of like be like, oh, I see this problem, and let's like try and work this out, and then like next time come and like that's, to me, like it's a bit like rote learning. It's like you have to kind of do it so many times for it to kind of be cemented in your brain for it to become natural. That's my view. It's unnatural in 2 words at the moment.
I think one of the things that I find about his whole process is that accountability thing, that who's going to hold you accountable to doing this. Because I know, like for myself, it's really easy to come up with all the plans and be like, "Yep, this is how we do it." Kind of like after we read Jim's book, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do all these things," and literally 2 weeks later, I was like, "What? What was I supposed to do? I can't remember." And I think a big part is that accountability, but not just that person. Like I don't know. I've had accountability partners where you'll be like, oh, I couldn't do it because of XYZ. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you'll do better next time. I don't know. I need personally that person that's like, that's not good enough. And I just wonder, like, is that a person? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only person who needs that person. Maybe everyone else is just really honest and they don't make as many excuses as I do. But like is that accountability person? Who is your accountability person in your this then what happens, his process?
I personally like, not that I am finding it hard to relate to everything he's writing. The accountability I can relate to. Like, I think it would be good to have that. But I'm finding that I feel like from a kid ministry aspect, I don't feel like all the scenarios like they're saying, like I feel like I relate to as much or as often. Like I don't have a lot of late nights like at church. Like I'm not called to do kid mid things late at night here at church. Now I have stuff like I work on personally at home, but like I'm never called away from my family for emergencies and things. Um, and maybe this is it. Like I have planned things ahead, like VBS, like that's a planned thing. And maybe then this is when it would apply because I know VBS is going to happen. And when I have, yeah, I plan for VBS. And when I plan that ahead, then I do this with my kids. You know, I have other things planned out. But outside of that, I feel like I don't have I don't feel like I'm taken away from my family as much as what they're talking about in this book. I don't know, does that make sense? I mean, my life is busy with ministry, but I don't feel like I am taken away from my family all the time. I don't know. The way that they're talking about in the book. I'm busy, but not taken away from my family. Like they talked about in the end about going on 12 trips in a year and stuff like that. I'm not taken away from my family in that capacity.
I think like, isn't it sometimes a matter of you make yourself as busy as you make yourself busy as well? I think in terms of like, I know that previously in our church we've had youth pastors that have made themselves extraordinarily busy, where it was their life. They breathed it, they lived it, they were awake thinking about it, they were asleep thinking about it. Um, and it ended up being like a really unhealthy lifestyle. It derailed their ministry because they got into a really unhealthy sin pattern as well. Um, and and not only did they put that expectation on themselves, but they expected like the youth to have that expectation, so that the church and the ministry and God, like the youth leaders, it was put above like say school and everything else. So if you didn't go to their meetings like every couple of times a week or a few times or any events and stuff, and um, then not you were seen as not um, as committed, even if you had schoolwork. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so yeah. Like I sometimes think that, but because Frank and his wife Jessica are big, big leaders of a Kidman organization, aren't they? Like they, so I don't know, maybe there's different, yeah.
I will say this, like, because the one thing I can relate to, I don't know if it's this chapter or the next, like when they talk about like, being so busy, like, like when your kids resent, like your kids starting to resent church, like that's always been a big fear of mine. Um, and I can't help that I have to be at church for different aspects of my job. Like I have office days that I'm accountable for. Um, so I mean there are things like that. Um, but I feel like that's when I balance well the opportunity to work from home and my kids still be able to do things like normal, right? I mean, that's where I feel like maybe that's when there's when this, then that type of scenario.
But I think in kids ministry, we might not be called to 12 seminars a year, but we get phone calls, we get text messages, we get emails. Our brain is being disrupted because VBS is in 3 months. And oh no, I forgot that I was supposed to do 6 other things. And we're sitting at the dinner table with our kids. And I think in kids ministry, it's slightly different in the essence that we're physically present, but we may not be mentally. Or we're carrying a lot more stress because we have potentially the largest teams of volunteers that we're running in the church. Like we are, like when I look at our volunteer teams, I'm like, we're responsible for, you know, X amount of people on a Sunday morning, but teams of up to like 120, 200 people. And that's always on our minds. And that's always, and I think for us, it's that if that's weighing on us, we're not actually with our kids. Like, and we tell ourselves, and I get it. Like, I'm speaking from a place where I've, you know, gotten to the end of the day and been like, I physically don't have anything left to give my kids because they are driving me up the wall today. They have 10 million. My kids, three of them have anxiety, all three. And two are neurodiverse. And there are days that I'm going, I physically cannot do this with you. It cannot be 5 o'clock. It needs to be 9. So we're all sleeping. But I think that this then that needs to look different for us because it's not, well, when we get to go out to lunch, because I don't know how many of you have supper meetings. I have very, very few, and usually they're actually intentional, like we're actually going to meet for supper because we have not seen my leaders, you know, or whatever. Like it's not a spur of the moment thing. But we do get those emails, we get those text messages, we get those kids that were like, oh, we have to solve this behavior problem. And we're sitting there. So I think we need to think in terms of that. When my mind is filled with this, how am I? So if I'm having a stressful time at work, what do I need to do to unload it? Because it's hard. Like as women, we're plates of spaghetti up there. Like if we're having one problem at work, we're also connecting it to every other thing that's happening in our lives, and it's all intermingled and it's a mess. Um, and so I think in that way, I saw a lot more of the connections, like thinking like, okay, when I have to spend 3 weeks at the church unexpectedly, how am I handling this? What are we doing with the kids? Because I constantly think of like, okay, am I forcing my children to do this? Like my daughter, God and our youth have just phenomenally done a lot of really awesome things with her, like our youth leaders. And so now she's like, she actually wants to sit in service and actually wants to be like sitting with them, learning. And I'm like, yeah, but at the beginning of the year, you signed up. You said, I want to do it twice. I want to do both groups. And now she's going, okay, but I don't want to. And how do we make sure and check on our kids that are doing that and checking our own hearts and being like, hey, are we just relying on them? You know, if I have a volunteer who calls me Saturday night, is my go-to, my husband's going to do it. My eldest is going to do it. My middle child, like, what is our go-tos for those things? Do I have a list of 7 subs who I call on top of it? And I have limits, like 10 o'clock at night, someone texts you and they're like, I'm ill and they're teaching Sunday school first thing in the morning. Yeah, chances are my husband's going to do it because most of my teachers aren't awake at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. But if I get a call on Thursday night, what is my backup? Who are my 7 people that I can text? Which leaders can I swap around? All that stuff. I've been doing that this week. I told my husband, I said, we have a ladies retreat and it's like all of the women seem to be going. Like, honey, if I cannot find somebody, can you? And he's like, go through the list first. But you know, I think in those terms, that's what we need to be thinking about is that ours is not so much when I'm gone, it's when I'm physically unable or mentally unable. That's our checkout. That's our dinners with the other people. That's our at the church all night on a Friday night. Men seem to do it better. I think certain positions lead better to going to the office, whereas kids ministry, we can do it in our brain and still change a diaper and still feed our kids and still do all that stuff.
Is there not someone who is there that can just, I know you're talking about like, having like substitutes and all that stuff, but like talking about the women's retreat, right? Which is something that I'm getting that you want to go to, but it's dependent on whether you are able to
Oh no, I'm
find a
going.
substitute. Oh, you're going? Okay.
Oh, I'm going.
Right.
It was like I was just an example of like we get those phone
Right.
calls, we get those text messages that are
Okay.
like, we need to fill this. And so if this often our go-to is, well, then my kid or my husband or my
Mm,
mom or whoever's in church, like, so how do we shift all that? Because I know last week we talked a little bit about how do we do it when our spouses are also serving in ministry in higher, you know, demanding positions and stuff like that. And so I think this ties into that because it's also they're gone. And what happens when both mom and dad are gone 5 nights a week? Because you may be only gone once, but your spouse may be gone 3 times, or
mm,
needing to be in a meeting, or how many phone calls did you get last night from different leaders asking for something or families or whatever.
mm.
Yeah, from that perspective, that makes perfect sense. That's my brain in a nutshell. but reading from this book, I'm like, yeah, this is not, this is not me. Like, but from that, yes, brain is constantly uh, on the go, always thinking of something. I think I said last week, it's like I have 10 windows open and Spotify playing and messages going off and
I think for me, like where I'm at in my life at this point is that there are things that I want to accomplish. And I'm like, okay, really to accomplish these things, I just need to not do the things that aren't going to let me accomplish those things. That's what it basically boils down to.
what did you guys think of his six keys to a great when this then that solution? Like occurs randomly but often, to be specific, deliberate action, accountability, helpful, and setting yourself up for success. Or and the no ands or buts. Do you think that is helpful in setting up your when this then that solutions?
One of the things I found interesting about reading is that I felt like, okay, I already know this stuff. Like, I think we've read enough. Most of us have read enough books. We've attended enough seminars. We've seen enough of the posts of how we need to learn to find balance and we need to learn to do all of these things. And so reading it, I was like, I don't feel like this is anything new. But sorry, to figure out how to use this computer. No, wrong one. Sorry. It is a day. Where is it? Here we go. But that very specific and the accountability to me, and I mean, I think they all kind of took it to the next level. I feel like I've heard these things before, but at the same time, some of those points, the way that he worded it or the way that he wrote it, it was like, yeah, maybe I need to do a little better on those. Like being specific, like if I'm stuck at this, then my kids are going to get to do this. And it's like, yeah, but what have, I don't know. My children are famous for finding the holes in my non-specifics. And they can come up with many, many things when I'm like, well, this is going to happen. Well, you said this was going to happen, but I didn't specify that. But you did not specify it. Oh, they know how to argue. And so I think, yeah, in our home, like we have to be in our home, we have to be very cautious with those things. Because if I were to tell them, like, every time we go out to a restaurant and I have a meeting at a restaurant, you get to come, oh, they will hold me to that. And then they will nail me to the wall when I step away from that. But I think, yeah, I found that they weren't totally surprising, but in some cases they were very good reminders, or they were worded in such a way that it was like, ah, that might be what I missed.
Same here. My Vinny, neurodiverse as well. I told him on Monday I was going to try and make muffins, and I used the word try specifically. But he has remembered that and has asked me every day, where are my muffins, Mom? You said you were going to make them. I said, no, I used the word try. And he's like, nope, you said you were going to make me the muffins. And like, he has held me to that I was going to make these muffins. And I just haven't heard the end of it. But I did like too how he even was specific in listing the people to choose, like, a list of people to choose from to make you accountable. And I've been thinking about that, who I'd choose. And my pastor's wife, she is amazing, like as a mentor. And I've been thinking about her, like talking to her and asking her to be kind of like my accountability partner. Because she is like very gracious, but also like a good, like a, I don't know if the word is stern, but like in loving grace is able to say, hey, you need to do this. So, someone needs to make me accountable, make sure I ask her.
I find I'm really good at telling other people, and they're like, "Oh, I want to do this," and I'm like, "Done. I'll check on you. I will send you messages." Like, I currently have someone who I'm trying to get baptized and like join the baptism membership class, and I text her every time there's a thing, and she's like avoiding me. But I think, yeah, for me, it's that accountability person that I won't just take no or an excuse. Like, my husband is actually pretty good at being, he's usually my person that's like, what's going on? Why are you not doing what you said you were going to do? Or my children, because they, like yours, hold me accountable to every word, minus the one that says, go do your chores. That one doesn't exist in their brains.
Yeah, I must admit that I probably do need to find an accountability partner. Sometimes, yeah, I think I I want to make things really easy for me, right? And love what the book is saying or what he has to say in the book and all that stuff. But really, like, I see my life at the moment as having like playing certain roles, right? I'm a wife, well, firstly, daughter of God, a wife, a mother, a ministry leader, an employee, and, you know, friend slash relative. Those are like my big kind of key roles in my life, right? One being identity and the others are key roles. And I'm like, okay, so I really want to be able to advance in those areas. And I feel like if I do that, then everything will just kind of fall into place. So, but confession, I have to admit to myself that I'm actually addicted to my phone. I feel like I am addicted to my phone. Like it's just there near me, wherever I am. And like, if I have a few moments, even instead of just letting my brain rest, I'm like, oh, what's happening in the news world, or what's happening on in New Zealand's education system, or what's, it has to be filled. And the quickest way to fill my mind is to just reach for my phone and find something. And it could be even like as tedious as watching like old clips of old, yeah, clips from sitcoms on YouTube. And I'm like, how is this advancing um, me as a mother? How is this advancing me as a wife? It's not. Do I really need to know this tidbit about Taylor Swift? Do I really need to know? Like, how is Taylor Swift enriching my life? She doesn't. How does, it's just like, oh, and it's just this addiction thing. I feel like I'm addicted, and then I can't get past that. So, before I can even be like, oh, this, that, da da da, I'm like, okay, I really need to like. Sometimes I just want to throw my phone away. I mean, it has really good uses. Like this is a really good use, but I'm like, oh, I don't know. That's where my struggle is at the moment.
There's actually, and I can't remember the name of the app. If I could find it, there's actually a really good app that you can actually like lock everything down when you're like, I don't want to see anything until 10 o'clock. You lock it all down and only text messages. I've been hunting. So if someone actually knows the name of that app, I would love it because I had it on my other phone and deleted it. But there is in Samsung, and I think Apple has it too. There's actually like a parent, um, it's you're supposed to put it on your kids' phones, but it's connected to an email. And if you put it on your phone, you can actually limit what you can do on your phone to the extent. So if you're like, I don't want to have access to my phone from 10 to 6 or at night or whatever, you can lock your phone right down, and then it requires like a parent code. It's a pain in the butt to get into. I found this out
Oh,
accidentally as I did it for my kids, but it was connected to my email, and it turns out that any device like phone that's connected to your email, it does it for it, whether it's a kid's phone, your phone, whatever. And so it's an amazing way to lock yourself out of everything that is distracting. But the app is way better because you can pick certain apps and you can lock it down on Sunday mornings. You can allow certain people to notify. It's great. But if anyone knows this app, please share it because I cannot find it. I got it off of some random guys he did an online conference in like 2020. It was one of the like when everyone went online, and it was this guy,
Probably.
and he had a backdrop and he had a table. Pardon?
It's probably either through Bark, or if you go to Protect Young Eyes, they usually have a lot of
No,
stuff.
this was no, that's parent protection. This was actually like uh it was a time management app like thing, and I
Oh,
can't find it again. It was amazing, but it was, if anyone attended it like 4 years ago, it was a guy with a backdrop and a round table, and it's not Ryan Frank. I know that. I've heard his stuff, and they weren't his apps. I Googled it. But it was just, he's a youth pastor too, I think, like a kid family youth pastor. And I just remember him at a table, and he's like, here's the apps I use. And it was amazing. But this was 4 or 5 years ago, and I can't find it, and I don't know what it was. And if you were in that, if you're watching this and you attended that time, please help me out.
It sounds amazing because I just want to smash my phone sometimes. I feel like that's the easiest option. It's just, and then like replace it with like an analog, well, not an analog phone. I mean, like, you know, the pre-smartphone where literally it's just texting and receiving phone calls.
Kristen, is it Life 360? Anyways, try that.
I will look it up. I don't think so. It was some weird, like I remember it being like a weird name.
Because I use that for my kids, but
No, it's
also
you couldn't track on it.
track. Okay.
No,
But
it was strictly like it, so it, you could lock your phone, or
hmm,
the apps that you, so if I like Facebook and Instagram and all those, so I could lock them for certain times. It would track how long you were on them. So at the end of the day, you could go back and be like, oh, I worked. And then you're like, oh, actually, I worked on Facebook. Um, and so it did that. You could lock it. It would lock your entire phone if you wanted it to. But it was the more thing I found to be really helpful was that I could turn certain apps off just for a
hmm.
specific time. So it kind of did a scheduling thing like that. It was amazing because then you could lock out any of those apps that you're like, no, this is my time. And you couldn't actually access it without going into the app and turning off. Like there was no passcode. It was like once you locked it, that's it. There is no unlocking it until it unlocks it for you. So it
Sounds
was
great.
yeah. Maybe it went out of business. I don't know. Maybe it changed its name and now I can't find it. Or maybe it became one of these amazing apps that are now out there, but it would be amazing if we could find it.
Was it free or is it something you had to pay for?
It was completely free. I'm very cheap when it comes to apps. I don't trust them all, but it was free, and it sounded, I remember him talking about it and being like, that's a weird name and it kind of sounds sketch. And then I did it and I was like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. But
Yeah.
I'm over here like scouring Google because I need this in my
Right.
I know I scoured it. I even thought, oh, I found it, and I downloaded it, and then it had like some weird extra stuff. And what I loved about it was the simplicity. I could just
Mm.
lock and unlock, and it wasn't like write down this and do this. And I was like, no, 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 I just need an app locking thing. Maybe the phones all have it now and it's just obsolete. They sold off to all the companies and we just
Mm.
haven't figured out how to use it. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think they would come pre-programmed because that goes against the whole reason for everybody to have a smartphone.
Yes.
That's not me being a conspiracy theorist at all. But
No, but that makes a lot of sense. Why would you put it on there when people have
there's a
addiction problems?
way
Right.
for free.
No, yeah, it was a free, some weird named. And I've tried, and I'm like, maybe I just like missed, or maybe I didn't use the app in its fullest, and that's why I can't find it. Because in my mind, it's simple, and it wasn't. But this guy like raved about it, but I can't find it anywhere.
Do you have
you
Google
probably
or do you have a
disappeared
Samsung?
with it. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
I don't know. I have a Google phone now.
Go in the Play Store and see like the list of, I don't know if they have it, but like a list of all the apps that you've ever downloaded ever in the history of having a smartphone.
I can do that. Yeah,
App,
clearly I'm not a smart person.
if
How?
you go to your app history, it should have it might have a list of, just like, can they see your phone?
Oh,
My kids.
it's like, here's my phone, but I don't know.
I'm like yelling at my kids to.
Because that's what I had hoped. I was like, I know I
The
downloaded
things
it.
you
I'm
learn in book
pretty
club.
sure I downloaded it on it. I know, this is important stuff.
This could change my life because I also am very much addicted to my phone. I need your phone. I need. What are you doing? As I'm waiting for him to finish a game.
Right. I found it interesting. Someone was saying at the very end of the book that they left their phone and something else in their car.
I don't know how they do that.
Oh yeah, here it is. They left their phone and their bag in the car. And I was like, well, I guess, but I was like, no.
I forget mine at home all the time. And I don't even remember half the time until I'm like, oh, I need to text my husband. And then I'm like, oh, it's at home on a charger. The best thing is to forget to charge your phone because then you have to plug it in at home and it doesn't leave the charging spot.
There you go.
I mean, I've forgotten my phone, but there's no way I could purposefully leave my phone in the car. Like,
Yeah, that's
there's just no way. And then my phone's connected to my computer anyway, so something's gonna go off device-wise in my house. So,
right.
yeah.
I also like number 4, the accountability piece. I like the part where he was talking about Carrie Newhoff, and he said he never lets a phone call go by without checking on my efforts to keep family and ministry healthy.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's awesome. So thinking of like, okay, a mentor, I have a friend and mentor that I should probably ask her to help me with this. Because even though I have teens and young adults, it's still a thing. I mean, my kids still ask me, Mom, when are you done with work? Mom, when can we hang out? Mom, so something to be thinking of.
Okay, so Kristen, on
Yes.
the Play Store, there's like your little name or your little icon.
Okay.
Click on that, and then you go to Manage Apps and Device,
Okay.
and then Manage, and then go over to Archived, and that should be he doesn't have any because this is his first phone, but if it's
Oh,
like
no.
if it's no,
I'll have to check. Maybe it'll be on. I think I might have been a Samsung at the time, but I'm sure
Oh.
it's the same. I'll check because I Googled it how to do it, but it took me to an app or whatever the heck I have, an Apple. So I will check my Samsung then. I never even thought, I was like, I don't know how to find it. I figured if I kept I kept searching for like time things, eventually it would be like, you have this in the cloud or something, some indicator that I had previously put it on a phone. But it didn't. Okay, that is good to know. I will hunt that down, and for everybody, when I figure it out, I will post it.
Trying to solve problems one phone at a time. Did anybody else find a story they kind of not resonated, but like liked at the end? The real life when this then that examples at the end? Anything that stood out? I kind of liked the guy that allowed his kids to help with the permission, like involved his whole family in deciding when or if he could leave. I kind of liked that, like involving the whole family, like in big trips and such, made kids feel part of, deciding that. And I thought it was sweet because he talked about how sometimes the kids would ask questions like, do you want to go? Do you need to go? Have you prayed about it, Dad? I thought that was great because it showed that, there's some good modeling there, and the kids were, reciprocating that. Thought that was really good. My kids would be more like, can we come along? I'm also very much about ownership. When I worked at the homeless shelter in the children's program for like 7 years, that was a really big thing of mine. And involving kids in decision making like that gives them that sense of ownership. So I think that's really big too.
Yeah, I think the whole giving kids ownership and that is, I mean, it's a part about it's about transferring your faith, right? It's kind of like the intergenerational faith thing happening. Like for my kids. Like last night we were watching, okay, so For King and Country are coming to New Zealand, and we're going to their concert in a couple of weeks. And so as part of that, I've been trying to get the kids really familiar with their songs. They're 10 and 7. And but then like their movie Unsung Hero has just come out, and it'll be screening in New Zealand in June. And I'm just like, this is the type of, I want them to have this faith growing up. I want them to like believe that, God is the God of the impossible, and God is the God of the small things, and God is the God of the, you know, of where they are now as well. And it applies not in everything that I do. I think in terms of like, you know, I don't want to keep my ministry separate from the kids. And I want to be able to, I mean, they get really excited when I get them to do things, but they, sometimes I'm like, I, the, like it has to be done at a certain kind of, not perfection level, but like standard. And it's hard for the kids to meet that sometimes. And I'm just like, I can do it myself because it's easier. But in those times I really do have to stop and ask myself, what's more important, the fact that it doesn't look as great, or the fact that the kids are really thriving and actually just being given opportunities to serve um, in the church, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't know, it's part of legacy building, this whole thing. Like ministry, it's not just ministry in it for like my spiritual health and all that stuff. It's actually a way to kind of channel faith in our household as well.
Yep, it can be hard to let things go when you want to do it yourself or want it to be a certain way. Any other thoughts here at the end, the ending of our book here? It was an all right book. No Jim Weidman book, but
It's funny you say that, Jody, because like I found Frank's writing to be easier to read than Jim's writing,
Oh, really?
but Jim has just a lot more substance than Frank's writing. I thought his like this book was more like a textbook on how to do, like it literally was a textbook. There was a length of a textbook in terms of like just really practical kind of tidbits. Whereas yeah, I found there was, yeah, Jim, he has a lot more stories and a lot more kind of, yeah. You can tell he's been in the game for longer, I think.
Yeah, I think just to me, this was just written more, obviously, I think two more, I mean, obviously very much for a ministry perspective, but just not very Kidman relatable. So like it was okay. And I think it's just stuff, like Kristen was saying earlier, I've heard this before. So it's nothing new, nothing wow. Like I was excited for it. And it still was all right. It just wasn't like, wow, amazing to me. But I mean, if you got something from it, it's awesome. Like that's wonderful. And I'm glad that you did. So, but yeah. Any other thoughts that anyone would like to share before we wrap up here? All right. Well, we are gonna meet up next week. It's not gonna be recorded. We're gonna just kind of have a sidebar conversation about I don't even know how to word it because it was like a lengthy sidebar conversation we started last week, but about um families and volunteering and serving and people committing to church and how that's kind of changed over the last 20 years. Would you say that's a good summary, Kristen? So it won't be recorded because I think some personal touchy stuff will be shared from churches and whatnot, and we don't want to share that publicly. But we still would love different Kidman leaders to be joining us, to hear different perspectives, to hear your thoughts. So join us next week at 1:30 for that. And then the following week on May 16th, we will be beginning our next book, Keeping Your Children's Ministry on Mission by Jared Kennedy. The book is posted in our group on the Facebook cover. I believe the link is in there somewhere for Amazon. So make sure you grab that, and we'll be starting that book. I haven't gotten it yet to look at how many chapters a week yet. Has anybody gotten the book yet? You've gotten it, Shannon? How does it look?
Yeah, I have it. Let me grab it. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I didn't really look at it, but I did buy it. It has
Is it lengthy?
10 chapters. I mean, it's definitely more lengthy than the one we've been doing right now. But I think we could probably do 2 chapters.
Okay.
I think more than 2 chapters would be too much, but it's set up into
It has questions at the
5
end of the
parts.
chapter, right?
Yeah, and then it's set up into 5 different parts.
Oh, okay.
So we could
10
also,
chapters, looks like.
yeah, we could also do the parts. Like we could do part 1 is 2 chapters, part 2 is 2 chapters, part 3 is 3 chapters, part 4 is 2 chapters, part 5 is 1 chapter. So if we want to do it for 5 weeks and then the 6th week meet with the author,
Okay.
if that works out.
Okay. Is that 1 week of 3 chapters? Are they really long?
Page 91 to 135.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's 40
30
some
pages.
pages, but it doesn't look too bad.
I mean, it's not
There's
end of
lots
the world.
Yeah, there's like charts and graphs and other things he has. So
I mean, that would get us right to, I mean, that'd be 5 weeks. That'd be to June 13th.
Hmm.
And then June 20th would be meet the author, and then we could take a break for the summer. I think that would be good.
that's good. Yeah.
Are you guys okay with meeting on June 23rd before Memorial Weekend? Those in the Americas? You guys good for that? Okay.
Yeah.
Kristen, you're saying no?
I can't make it. We have preschool VBS that week.
Okay.
So,
Oh.
and it'll be done at 11:30. I don't know. There's no time change between now and then. So yeah, it might be able to make it, but yeah, no, we do a VBS just for preschoolers right before school ends. So they get their
That's
own special
fun.
thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
but I'll be there for everything else.
Okay.
And like I said, I might be able to, but that's our wrap up day. So
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'd like to be done before, yeah. Yeah, that would be good. Okay, we'll just do that schedule then. We'll just do the 5 sections, I think, and then ending on the 20th with the author. I think that would be,
That's great.
yeah. And then be done for the summer, take a break. Cool. All right, ladies, we'll
Okay.
end here. Have a wonderful week. And I'll see you next Thursday. Bye.